Okay, so it's 6:30, inshallah. We can do a slow start here. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah, wa tu'izzu man tasha' wa tudhillu man tasha' biyadika al-khayr. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm hoping, inshallah, everyone can hear me and see me and the screen that I'm sharing right now. If you can't, please feel free to send in a question, comment. The Q&A box will be open throughout. So if you have any questions, feel free to type it in. Sometimes we might have a thought and a question that may come up, and later, if you don't ask, it might not be on your mind, and it might be difficult to go back to your previous thought process. So feel free to, inshallah, share any questions or comments that you may have, and we can talk about it. So last time we talked a little bit about the role of parents and how parenting is an active process where a relationship between the child and the parent is a very important relationship, not only in the development of certain characteristics within the child, but also because it serves as a connection that we have, that children have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And that connection that begins very early on in the childhood, and the aspects and attributes. I mean, naturally, we know human beings are a Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. So we're representatives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the potential to be the vicegerents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we, through our actions towards other beings, other creation, we serve as a connection. We serve as a means of that their God image creation. So children who are very, very young cannot differentiate between, they can't even tell what's in front of them and what's not, right? So like one of the issues that very young toddlers struggle with is as soon as they wake up, they start crying, because if they can't see their mother, they believe that the mother's not there, doesn't exist anymore, right? And so this issue of object permanence comes a little bit later in the like a year or so later in the life of the child. So they don't understand. They're discovering the world, and when they begin to ask questions like who created this world, or what's there, or why should we be thankful, we'll talk about gratitude today. It goes through the parents. If the parents have not given them experiences, and I don't mean lectures, I mean experiences where they recognize the mercy of Allah, where they recognize the forgiveness of Allah, and if the parenting was all around punishment and strictness, or vice versa, if it's all around giving too much. Today we talk a little bit about how children can be entitled and their feelings of entitlement, then we are destroying and creating a very unhealthy image of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the responsibility is on us, right? So us as parents. So inshallah, I mean, the title that we have is Standing Firm in the Shifting World, A Parent's Guide to Postmodern Challenges, because the world that we live in now is changing, is shifting. The values are shifting, the things that are considered important. How do we recognize what's true, what's not true? All of this is shifting. And a lot of this has to do with postmodernism. And I'll go over some of these concepts because, unfortunately, myself included, I mean, until I actually studied it, I didn't know about it. And so, we go over this very briefly in our education, unless you have read deeply into it. Most of us don't understand. And we can't answer the question, why is the world the way it is right now, right? Why is it shifting? Why is there so much change that's happening? So inshallah, we'll go over some of that so we can understand, and especially from a context of how it applies to child upbringing and rearing. By the way, I will upload this inshallah after I'm recording it, so I will upload it to YouTube, and I will share the link with your principals so you all can share it. And you can go to the Khalil Center's YouTube page. Inshallah, I should be up by tonight. If not tonight, then tomorrow for sure. So when we talk about postmodernism, right, we have to understand what Enlightenment was. Enlightenment was this late 1600s to early 1800 movement that focused on three main critical concepts, right? You have truth, reason, and subjective knowledge. So now you might look at that and say, okay, well, what's wrong with truth, reason, and knowledge, right? So truth from a postmodern perspective is not a objective truth. So there's a lot of emphasis that would put on subjectivity. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that, I mean, this would happen frequently between parents and children, right? Parents have a certain point of view that they're approaching a situation with. A situation happens, and parents have a certain point of view. And the children see the same situation and they have a certain point of view. So for example, technology use, parents see a child playing on their iPad or their PlayStation or whatever. They come in and they say, okay, it's time to put it away now, right? And the child hopefully obeys. And if not, then parents get a little strict and say, okay, you have to do it, otherwise you'll get in trouble or whatnot. Parents are thinking that we don't want our children to be addicted. And if a behavior is left uncontrolled, unchecked, then there is a chance that it will become dangerous. It will become harmful, right? People will be addicted to it. So parents are going from that perspective, right? It makes perfect sense. And by the way, I do marriage counseling, and this is a very similar thing happens in marriages, where something happens and one person has a perspective that makes perfect sense. Like you're like, wow, okay, I can see why you are doing that. So if somebody asked you, hey, why are you telling your child to get off the technology? You would say, well, this is the reason. And they say, that makes perfect sense. Now look at it from a child's perspective. Child has their own subjective perspective, which is that I'm trying to have fun. Let's say I finished my homework, I've done everything, and I want to have fun, and all my friends are having fun, and all these kids online are playing on Roblox or Fortnite or wherever, right? They're playing. And so my parent is coming in and they're ruining my fun. They're ruining the fun time that I'm having. Okay. Now, you look at it from a child's perspective, it makes perfect sense, right? Most of the time, what we parents tend to do is we come in and put the foot down and say, no, I don't care what you think. You're going to do what I tell you to do. You have to do it, which is not a good approach, right? Because ultimately, you want to be able to validate the child, and then you want to be able to assert the rules. So I'm not saying don't make the rules. I'm not saying don't ask them to leave the technology, but validate their understanding that they're having fun, and you're asking them to not have fun. So in those situations, the question is, what is the truth, right? Is the truth that the child is going to get addicted and they need to be removed? Or is the truth that the parents are coming in and destroying their fun? And as parents, we have some level of, through our experience and knowledge and some objectivity, we can come in and say, wait a second, I know what I'm doing is right. But we live in a world, and because of Enlightenment, one of the things they challenged was truth, right? So the ideas that are presented through Enlightenment is the idea that there is no such thing as objective knowledge or truth or objective reasoning, right? Or reasoning is your own mind. So when a child looks at the perspective, they're reasoning from their own mind. They're saying, this is what parents are doing, right? And parents are evil and they're bad and they don't want me to have fun. That's their reasoning. That's their subjective truth. That's based on their subjective knowledge, which they don't have the experience that you and I as parents might have. So Enlightenment and this postmodern world that we live in now after that is, it perpetuates, it encourages that, right? It discourages from the idea that there's an objective truth, right? And so, as Muslims, for example, right, we have something called the truth with a capital T, right? Haqq, as we say. Our aqidah, for example, right, is, you could say, objectively truth, that Allah exists, there's angels, there's life after death, right? And so we always turn back to that, but the modern challenge is that there's no such thing as an objective truth, that your truth is whatever you make it out to be. So within couples, that happens all the time, right? One person will say, my husband is oppressive, or whatever, he's a toxic masculinity. The husband will say the wife is a feminist, or whatever. Like there's They have their own separate version of how they see a problem, and they both believe that they're correct. And this happens with children as well. Postmodernism is more of a broad term, right? Mid to late 20th century. It questions or critiques overarching narratives, right? Now, these narratives, by the way, have been there for centuries, and some of them, if not all, have some religious grounding in them. It questions those, right? So, for example, within the family structure, the question of, you know, like, why is it the man may have more authority in making decisions, or, you know, why does women have to do the house chores or take, you know, give more time to children than a man who's giving more time to work? There's these things are being challenged, right? Now, there's some, by the way, some households, you know, as long as if you're functioning well and you're serving your purpose towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a different thing. But in most cases, I've seen there's been a lot of struggle with this, even couples trying to, you know, reconcile how to make it work. But questioning, critiquing overarching narratives, ideologies, and structures of belief. And there's certain characteristics that this postmodernism carries. And I know this sounds a little philosophical, but it fits really well into us as parents and our children and how we approach parenting. Relativism, for example, reject the idea of objective truth and universal moral values. For us, when we say truth, objective truth, we mean what comes from Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So if Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says greed is bad, then we know that's objectively bad. If Islam says that a relationship outside of marriage, whether it's before or after you get married, is bad for you and it's a sin, then we accept that. That's an objective truth for us. No matter where, you might find a study tomorrow that says that those couples who have an open relationship, whatever they call this, non-monogamous, ethical non-monogamous relationship, that a study says that that is the best way to live your life. As Muslims, we don't accept that. We cannot accept that, right? Because that goes against our moral values. But postmodernism says, if there's data to show that, if that's what the people are happy, there are Muslim couples, by the way, who actually now start to have conversations about this. This is like, it sounds very bizarre, but it's true. Our children may have these conversations when they grow up, right? Why should I commit myself to one person for the rest of my life? So Islam gives us some objective values and truth and universal moral values, but relativism says, no, reality is relative, it's subjective, and it's constructed through language and culture. And so as culture changes, our reality should also change, okay? Then there's deconstruction that's part of postmodernism as well. Deconstruction of what? Concepts, typically thought, that they say that these are which were solid and unchanging before. It says no, you can deconstruct them. Identity doesn't have to be one thing that remains the same. History, progress. So now we see issues of identities that people have, right? That people struggle with. Funny thing is, postmodernism actually uses irony and parody. So some of these things are joked around, right? They're thrown out. You see in movies and in entertainment. The idea is when you do it in jokingly, people don't really get defensive. But the more you keep doing these things, the more these ideas will spread, right? People will become easily acclimated to it. Fragmentation refers to the idea that reality is not coherent, unified whole, but rather a complex collection of disconnected parts. Again, for us Muslims, we don't believe that. Like, that goes against our faith. For us, the only reality is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? When I say the capital R or capital T, realities and truths, there's only one that we know to be true, right? When we say La ilaha illallah, we reject any possibility that there's any other reality, there's anything else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And my own subjective understanding means nothing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And postmodernism also provides resistance to grand narratives or meta narratives, right? It encourages skepticism of grand theories, ideologies that attempt to explain everything. So it's like, no, and new words get invented, right? New words come into being because people are are trying to come up with their own subjective understanding about what's happening. And as part of that process is what's called like the post-truth, right? So what is post-truth? Again, the idea that, well, you have your own truth. I have my own truth. We all have our own truths. And the word truth is attached to it, right? It's not we have our own understanding or experiences that may or may not be true, right? The idea is, no, what you feel, what you think, what you believe, it is your truth. And that's all that matters. Nothing else matters. No one can come in and challenge your truth, right? Now, again, this is a little bit philosophical, but why am I explaining all this? Because all of these things are being fed to our children. All of these things through, their experiences, through media, through all of this is being fed, that whatever you think is true, whatever you feel is true, whatever you believe is true, it doesn't matter what your parents say, it doesn't matter what the Quran or the Sunnah or Islam or anything else says, that, objective facts don't matter, right? Emotion over facts, like, again, what you feel versus what the facts are. I'll use another example, very, very frequent within relationships, right? Sometimes the couples come in and one of them says, oh, this person was gaslighting me, right? And, for those of you who don't know, gaslighting, again, another word that we have invented, is the idea that they make you think that you're crazy or something. Now, it does happen. I'm not denying the fact that there's such thing as gaslighting in relationships or whatnot. But then, when I asked the other person, what were you doing? I was trying to make them rethink about what they were doing or what they were believing. I was like, hold on a second, you're coming to a conclusion. I want you. So the person was saying that I wanted to give some advice and I wanted to, just maybe challenge a little bit. But the idea of challenging is seen as negative. Like, no, if I think that this is true, if I feel this way, then this is it. This is how it should be. And that, again, is a very dangerous thing for us to be, because what you may feel, and by the way, feelings do change. What you feel in the moment is not going to be the way you feel later. I'll give you a good example. We go to the grocery store, we're like, oh man, I got to lose some weight. I've had, I need to shed some pounds. And you buy something healthy, right? You get, a small carrots and a nice dip or some salad or something or whatever, fruit. You come in that moment, you truly believe and you feel your truth is, your experience, subjective experience is, or mine, we've all done it, is that I'm going to eat healthy. I need to eat healthy. And I'm buying this so I can consume it later. Okay, now fast forward to a week later, you're throwing that whatever you bought in the garbage, right? And at that time, you feel something different. You might feel guilty. Or actually in between that, let's not fast forward that much. Let's go a little bit like a day later. You go to your fridge, you open your fridge to eat something. You have an option of something healthy, something unhealthy. You're like, you know what? I'm going to start tomorrow. So I'll eat something unhealthy. The next day, you're like, yeah, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. I'll eat something unhealthy. Maybe third day, you might eat a little bit of what you brought, like, the broccoli or something. The fourth, and then the seventh day, you're throwing it out. So at each of those intervals, each of those points, our emotions were different, right? And emotions change. That's how it is. When we get married, our emotions are different. When we have children, at first, our emotions are different. When they come to a certain age and they're challenging us, our emotions are different. When they're older and they're, living on their own, our emotions are different. Emotions change in relationships. Emotions change over time. But this post-truth era says that, your personal beliefs and emotions have more influence, have more value, and that you should go by it. You should follow it, right? And again, that's a very, very dangerous, if you look at just from a psychological perspective. Unfortunately, psychologists perpetuate and they teach these things as well. The idea that do what makes you happy. What makes you happy, right? I mean, okay, what makes me happy at one point is going to be different than what makes me happy at a different point. But it's like, no, do whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. And that creates this polarization because you have, like, for example, if you look at the political realm, you have the conservatives and liberals, or however you want to say it, each one of them think that they are right, that they have the truth. And then they start to look at the other person as the other group. This is them versus us, them versus us. So again, I'm kind of wrapping all this up because we as parents need to be aware that this is what's happening in society. This is what's leading, unfortunately, us towards what we're seeing now. Destruction of family values, religion, everything. I mean, a lot of people take pride in saying, "Oh, Islam is the fastest growing religion." I mean, religion is actually faster, more like faster in its rate. There's more atheists, right? So, ex-Muslims, and which, by the way, if you ever follow, I've done my own research and following of ex-Muslims. A lot of them are closeted, meaning like parents have no idea. Parents think, oh, my son, my daughter, mashallah, is good Muslim, wears hijab, he's a hafiz or whatever, goes to Islamic school, but deep down inside, they don't follow Islam at all. And so, along with what I talked about before, which is our relationship with the children, you also have these external forces that are coming in, and that are creating certain truths and certain type of certain like mindsets and behaviors, right? And one of them, one of the belief that comes from this is the idea of entitlement. Okay, so entitlement, that I am something. Now, I'm going to be very honest here. Children learn a lot of this from parents, right? And parents, most of us in this community, in this school area, probably Desi, so I can speak from a Desi culture perspective. Also, I'm sure it's similar in Arab and other cultures as well, is that the idea that we have something, or I am something, that is somehow more valuable, somehow better. The way we cook our biryani is better than the way, the neighbors or that person cooks their biryani. I mean, it's something as simple as that. But it gives you a sense of importance, because we don't think to say it's different. Sometimes some of us might think that way, that, we cook biryani differently, and that's fine. Ours is our way and theirs is their way. No, it's better. Like, the way we do things is better. We don't like the way that the other person, handles this or does that. So parents are learning that. The entitlement of, like, especially because most parents tend to be like doctors, engineers, or lawyers, or like well off, right? So there's an entitlement of, like, I am something. I have degrees, I have learned, I have and whatever, the master's, doctoral degrees. I'm the CEO or the manager of this company. I own this many businesses. So therefore, people need to respect me. People need to value me, right? We do that as adults, unfortunately. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran, right? Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum in Surah Hujurat, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. O people, we created you from one man and one woman, male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. Then we divided into different tribes and nations, so that you can be recognized. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a very valid point. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum innallaha alimun khabir. That indeed the most honorable in the eyes of Allah is the one who is most cognizant, conscious, most God-fearing. It's not the most honorable in the eyes of Allah, is not the one who's the most rich. It's not the one who's who has the highest degree. It's not the one who makes the best biryani, right? It's the one who has more consciousness of Allah, has more fear of Allah. That's what gives us value, not entitlement, value, right? In our value, obviously we're insan, there's inherent values. We're Muslims, alhamdulillah. There's value to that. We're the followers of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah for that. But amongst that, being the ummah, what gives us more value is more taqwa, right? So when we parents have this idea of entitlement, when we parents have this idea that I am something, right? Me, like I. And you remember, I think I quoted last time too, right? The quote by Rumi, where he says, like, when the sword of La strikes, nothing remains, not even the lover, not even the person, not even us, right? Meaning, when we say La ilaha illallah, we negate everything. We negate ourselves, our existence. We negate our degrees, our like money, our children, everything. And we say there's nothing that has any value, any worth, any entitlement except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we know, even those who own businesses and are physicians or whatever, can attest to that all this can be taken away in a heartbeat. right? We know that. It has been for people that we might have seen. No matter how much we try to, preserve and protect and invest in open IRAs or 401ks, all of this can be taken away in a heartbeat, right? So that entitlement causes a significant strain on personal and professional relationships. So, thinking that I am better than my sister, my brother, thinking that I'm a better physician than that doctor over there, thinking that I'm a better, IT manager, or my business, I know how to run business better than he or she does, right? It makes us see people differently. It makes us give people less value. And when children do that, it's the same thing, right? Because they're learning it from us as parents, and coming to schools or amongst other peers, and they're projecting it and saying, okay, well, I'm better, we're better than you. I'm a better person than you. Not to mention Islamic schools, especially, but other schools here as well, and back home schools, create so much competition, right? The idea of first, second, third. When you teach a child that you have to become first, right? When parents are expecting their child to become first, and a child is aiming to become first place, that means who cares about other people? You worry about yourself. Other people can, go to hell, for the lack of better words. They can do whatever they want. You are going to be the best in the class. So it's not an idea of collaboration, like let's work together. It's more so of like leave everybody behind. It's a race. Get to the first place, right? So children, it causes a strain on the relationships with friends, with peers, with teachers, and for children with parents, and like I said, for us adults as well, even professionally. Entitled people will expect more from others without considering their needs or feelings. So what you take away as part of entitlement is empathy, right? What is empathy? The idea that I need to look at what the other person is going through, what they're feeling, put myself in their shoes, recognize and validate them, and then I can have my own opinion if needed. But that gets taken away, because if I think that I'm something, then I don't other people's opinions, values don't matter to me, right? And again, that idea of lack of empathy creates other psychological problems, like psychopathology. People who are psychopaths don't have any empathy for other people. It creates narcissists, right? Who don't have any empathy for others, who don't see other people's values or their opinion valuable. I was listening to a hadith yesterday. The Imam after Maghrib was reading that Rasulullah said, I don't know exact words, I don't remember, but there's the three things that are destroyers, can destroy individuals. One of them was, I think, greed, that you follow. The second one was, I think, desires that you obey. And the third was thinking that your opinion has value, right? That's what I mean. Like when you think your opinion has value, you think other people's opinions don't matter. It creates a imbalanced relationship where one party will always feel overburdened and unappreciated, right? So entitlement causes that. It happens in the household as well. The husband might think I'm more entitled because of XYZ. The wife might think I'm more entitled because of XYZ. So our approach as Muslims is one of the one who gives, who provides. Who is the most entitled human being according to us Muslims? Who do we consider as the most entitled human being? I mean, most of you should know it's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Why? Because he is the best of creation. He's the leader of the prophets, right? The one with the best character, the closest to, the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But even he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when some Bedouins call out to him or do something silly, he's patient. When his wife Aisha takes a pot and throws it on the floor, he's patient. He doesn't say, "How dare you? Who are you to respond this way to me?" Right? We heard last time the hadith of Anas bin Malik, where he said that Prophet never said, "Don't do this, don't do that, or do that." Right? He never gave that kind of command. Like, you need to follow what I'm telling you, because my opinion, my command is more valuable than what you think. Right? And when he came home, Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, well, what did he do? Well, he kept himself busy. He took care of himself. He took care of his family, right? He could have easily said that I'm the I'm so busy with the community and, with this message of Allah that I can't do any of this household tasks and chores. Could have commanded other people to do it, but he sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't. So because he was also mindful of other people's needs and their feelings, he was empathic towards them, right? This lack of empathy, like I said, because of the focus on our own needs and wants, can create other psychological problems. It leads to conflict, breakdown of relationships, right? Like I said before, though. And it can affect the person's ability to accept and learn from their mistakes. Because if you're entitled, you don't think that you've made a mistake. You don't think that you need to apologize. You don't think that there's something wrong that you've done. And so people who are entitled blame others for their problems rather than taking personal responsibility. Like they don't want to take personal responsibility and say, which is another problem, by the way, in the society that we're moving towards creates this problem. Now I'm speaking to parents, hopefully. So us parents, we need to work on this so our children can learn from that, which is the idea that when something happens, that one person has to become the victim. Automatically is the victim. It's either my fault or her fault, my fault or his fault. He's the one that's doing dhulm and I'm the mazlum. He's the oppressor, I'm the oppressed. Or she's the one who's doing this and I'm the one that's the victim. That victim mentality takes away the ability to reflect, takes away from the ability to learn. So when a situation comes, always ask the question, and not in a way to like blame yourself, but rather, what is it that I could have done differently, even if it's 1%? And create an environment in the house where we do that in front of our children, right? Where if a child comes to you and complains about, Baba, like yesterday when you said this, that really hurt, or, when you, I think my son said this to me one time, sometimes you ask us to turn something off, like PlayStation or something, and we're in the middle of a game and, we just need like a few more minutes. And it's just so annoying. If you could just give us a few more minutes. That's fair, right? That's, I think, a fair thing to ask. So maybe give them a early warning. Hey, you have 10 minutes left or 5 minutes or 20 minutes left so that they have enough time to finish out what they're doing. But instead of blaming and taking the victim approach, like the children might take, oh, I'm the victim because my parents are controlling. We have to start taking responsibility and teach our children to take responsibility for the thing that they could have done differently, even if it's 1%, right? Because then not only do we get rewarded for putting effort into and learning from our experiences, if we truly are the victims, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us as well. It also leads to lack of self-awareness, accountability, which can cause further damage to relationships, right? Because if a person sits down and reflects, like as a practice, the family, sit down and we reflect on what happened. Here's what I could have done something differently. What did I do wrong? Where can I do something better? That then allows us to be accountable for our, do a muhasabah of what we did, right? There's a famous saying, I think it's a hadith, but, do accountability before your hisab is done on the day of judgment. So the idea, and some of the scholars mention this as a good practice, that every night before going to bed, take a moment, just close your eyes and reflect on your day and think about doing accountability of your day. How did you spend your day? Was it good? Was it bad? What could you have done differently? Did you accomplish all your goals? Even modern day psychology will tell us the same thing, like that journaling or before bedtime reflection can be quite helpful. And then people, if they don't learn and accept their mistakes, have difficulty accepting feedback and constructive criticism. Like there's no opportunity for growth at all with them, right? So again, what does Islam tell us? I talk about this right now, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ilah. He is the only one that we worship. And we have to show our children and teach our children that that's what we truly internalize, right? That we have more faith in Allah than our businesses. We have more faith in Allah than our degrees. We have more faith in Allah than our, ability to cook or manage something, right? And ultimately, it's our job to connect. So even when children give us the credit, a child might come to you say, thank you, Baba, for giving me food or getting food from outside. You say, you're welcome. I appreciate your kind words. But alhamdulillah, also thank Allah, because Allah is the one who gave me this ability. Allah is the one who controls all of this. It's not really me. So be thankful to Allah that He gave me the opportunity. He provided me the resources, the knowledge, the job, the paycheck so I could pay for your food, right? So we have to be able to connect, and we also have to be thankful. So not only do we instill gratitude, I talked about gratitude journaling, I think, before, but the idea that, like, you sit with your family and, ask a question, hey, in the last 24 hours or in the last day or so, identify 1 to 3 things that you're grateful for, right? That we're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the day for everything, right? Like, my throat is dry. I'm able to, pick up this glass of water, take a sip. It's cold water, right? There's so many things I could be thankful for here. There's so many, like the fact that I can just reach over and grab water. There's people whose hands don't work. Maybe they have, some kind of, they were paralyzed or something, right? So they don't have the ability to reach out and grab water. The fact that I have water available here, there are people in the world that don't have any water. It's clean, filtered water. It came from a cooler. It's cold water, it's relatively fresh water. There's so many things that I could be grateful just in this one act of me grabbing a glass of water and drinking. And the fact that I drank and I didn't choke. There's people who choke on water and they can die, potentially die from that, right? So having that ability, because what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, right? That if you're grateful, I will certainly give you more. But وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ, if you're ungrateful, and kafara and kufr, like there's a correlation, it's a similar word, right? Because if you don't believe in Allah, you're ungrateful. But if you're ungrateful, inna adhabi la shadid, then surely my punishment is severe. So having that ability to be grateful to Allah and instilling that in our children. Patience, sabr, right? We've talked about this before as well. So sometimes even teaching children that it's okay to be hungry, even teaching children that it's okay to not have something, even if you have the ability to afford it, even if you can give them something, maybe hold back, maybe give some time. A child is saying, hey, a new phone is out, can I please buy it? Maybe it's a good child too, and you're like, oh, you know what, he earned it or she earned it, let me give it to them. No, just hold off. Okay, you know what? How about we wait until December or January? How about we give it 3 more months and then I'll get it. You're teaching them to delay their gratification. You're teaching them to be patient, right? Though again, going back to us, most of us, we're not patient. Most of us, as soon as a new phone comes out, we buy it. And we live in a society, going back to what I talked about, this postmodern world, where we're told, if it makes you happy, do it. So if a new phone comes out and I'm feeling kind of down, I'm thinking, okay, maybe a new phone will cheer me up. A new car is out, a new feature in a car is out. So I'm told by the society to go and do what makes you happy and buy it. So I go and buy it. And I'm doing the same thing when my children are watching me. And so when they want something new, what are they going to do? They want to buy it. They don't know how to hold back from making that purchase because they're seeing their parents do it, right? And that goes back to the entitlement piece, that they're thinking that, their opinion, their value, their desires matter more than anything, matter more than the fact that it's healthier to delay your gratification, right? There's a very famous marshmallow test that, psychologists have done with children. Basically, like if you go on YouTube, you can, search for marshmallow test and it'll come up. They'll give them a marshmallow and they'll say, here's a marshmallow. It's in front of you. You can eat it if you want. I'm going to leave the room for a minute. I'll come back. But if you don't eat it, if you don't touch it, by the time I come back, I'll give you 2. So they're testing for delayed gratification. And if the child, people who are not able to delay their gratification, they want instant gratification, there are a lot of psychological harms that are associated with that, right? In the future, in their professional lives, personal family lives, etc. So we're teaching our children how to be patient. Islam focuses on, the idea of justice versus entitlement. And again, justice, like I mentioned before, isn't always going to be one way or the other. Like, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best judge, right? We can never get true justice in this dunya. It's impossible. What do I mean by that? Like, for example, if somebody murders someone, person A murders person B, and then as a result, person A is hanged to death or given the death penalty or murdered, are those 2 murders the same? Yeah. Was justice done? From a worldly perspective, sure, that's the most you can do. And, eye for an eye, and that's why the Quran says, fine, you can do that, but if you forgive, that's better. But the fact is that those two deaths are not the same. If somebody punches me in my face and I punch them back on their face, it's not the same. I'm not a very muscular person. My punch will not hurt the other person. Maybe the other person is very muscular and they punch me and it hurts more. So there's no such thing as fair and true justice in this dunya. That's meant for the akhirah. So in this dunya, there's going to be a little bit of, imbalance here and there. And that's why we approach the idea of justice with that imbalance, right? So if somebody harms us, we can take a step back and say, okay, I have a choice. Maybe I shouldn't harm them back. Maybe I need to be mindful of that. Again, children are watching us. Parents are doing this all the time. We're trying to, if somebody does something to you, he didn't come to my kid's birthday party, I'm not going to go to his kid's birthday party, right? He didn't call me when my, family member died, I'm not going to go to his family member's janaza, right? And the last thing, which Sufis talk a lot about, is acceptance, right? Acceptance to what? To all of these facts of the world that we live in, right? Acceptance to the fact that there's sadness in this world, there's anxiety in this world, acceptance to the fact that there is imbalance in this world, right? We don't live in a socialist world. There are rich people, there are poor people. There are people who have more than us, there are people who have less than us. Acceptance, the fact that I could be wrong, that I can harm other people as well, that I'm not always going to be right. Even though in my mind, my brain, shaitan, everything is telling me that I'm right. I'm the one, who deserves this, but I have to be open to the alternative, to the possibility, and see it from the other person's lens. So in Islam, Terbia is a term that's used, right? This is the idea of disciplining, upbringing our children. I mentioned this last time before, I think, is also like our children are a gift and a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? They're a form of a gift. So we have to, when somebody gives you a gift, you're thankful to Allah, you honor that gift. And then if somebody gives you with a trust, you have to make sure that you don't betray that trust. So part of that requires, tarbiyah, which begins from birth, right? It's not, some parents sometimes wait way too late, until a child is old enough. No, a lot of that, we talked about this last session, that the developmental theorists go as far back as age 5 and 6 and say that by that age, the personality is concluded, it's developed, fully developed. So the way they'll behave, the way they'll express their emotions, are they going to be organized, not organized, outgoing, not outgoing, all that for the most part is determined. So we have to begin early. It's an active process, meaning it's an ongoing process for us, right? Until these children become their own selves and they leave or do whatever they want to do, and legally and ethically and Islamically, it is our responsibility to play an active role in their upbringing. And later, if they're not in our lives all the time, then it's our responsibility to still give them nasiha, give them advice, whenever we can. We cannot outsource the tarbiyah. What do I mean by that, right? Especially Islamic schools. This is a very common thing. Unfortunately, a lot of parents will, say, like if you ask them the question, if you ask yourself the question, what are you doing for your child in making them better Muslims? The conversation begins and ends with, do I send them to CPSA or some Islamic school? That's not how it should be, right? That's one part of, we're making sure that the educational environment that they receive, their required education, is Islamic. And for that reason, we are, sending them to an Islamic school, right? But that doesn't mean that our job is done. That doesn't mean that, when they come home, we don't have to play an active role. No, that is an active process. And tarbiyah also has to be balanced. So, we talked about last time about how rewards and punishment work, rewards versus punishment, mercy versus strictness, giving and taking, a balanced approach, right? If you look at parenting model, style of parenting, it talks about how a style of parenting that, sets clear, expectations, but also is one that's an active role in the child's life, is the one that's healthier. And the idea that if their God image is developed through us, then we have to be balanced as well, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is balanced, right? Allah is not, he can be merciful, he can also be strict, right? He can give or he can take, the idea of expansion and compression, right? Qabd and bast. So there are aspects of Allah that balance, obviously his mercy supersedes his wrath, but those qualities are there. So we don't want our child growing up thinking that take life easy, don't worry, everything's okay, you can fail all you want, you don't need to learn from your mistakes. We also don't want them thinking that, oh my God, I can't make any mistakes, I can't mess up. The moment I mess up, it means that I'm a bad person. Okay. So how do we foster gratitude? So let's talk about something that's practical. This concept that I want you to take home, hopefully today, is that parents are a model for their children. We learn, the reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messengers, and he says in the Quran, right, I sent messengers from amongst yourself, right? Min anfusikum. Why? Because those then prophets, the Anbiya, the messengers that are sent from Allah, from amongst us, can serve as role models for us. So when we look at the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he's a human being. He became hungry, right? He became tired. He also, felt angry and sad. So we can relate to them. And so role modeling or modeling certain behaviors begins with the idea that there is a certain connection that exists between us because we're human beings. And children learn through social modeling. They learn through social observing. They learn through watching their parents. They learn through observing them. They learn through seeing what the parents are doing. So, if the father gets really, really angry and starts yelling and screaming, throwing things or breaking things, then the child learns that when you get angry, this is how anger is going to be expressed. This is normal to throw things. It's normal to yell and scream. It's normal to, hit, right? So we're teaching them through their observations of us. So just like we can teach them negative things, we can also teach them positive things. So when we're talking about gratitude or any of the things that we talked about today, we have to be sincere and make it a point to do it in front of them, right? Sometimes it sounds a little bit weird. Like when I said earlier, if your child says, thank you for bringing me food, you kind of, elaborate a little bit more and say, alhamdulillah, we also thank Allah for giving us the opportunity, giving me the opportunity so I can serve my family. It sounds a little bit like, okay, why do I need to do that? But you do, because that's how children learn. That's how children are watching you. They're looking at you as a model figure. And so when you do that in front of them, then they're more likely to repeat those behaviors. And we have to model our humility and our humbleness in our achievements. We have to let them recognize that if Allah has made me a accomplished individual, is if Allah has given us this house and these cars, that I'm thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm in gratitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I'm not thinking that I'm entitled. I'm not thinking that, I somehow did something to deserve it, right? We have to encourage and reinforce small opportunities of gratitude. The best reinforcement that children can get is our attention and our kind words, right? Telling them, hey, good job, awesome. I saw what you did there, right? When you thanked your brother, for helping you, that was a great job. Keep it up, right? That was awesome. Or if like brother helps, and you the child, and you say to the child, go and thank him. You should thank him because he helped you, right? So encouraging those behaviors. We also need to expose them to others, especially those who are less fortunate, right? This hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he ﷺ said, like, unduru ila man asfala minkum, right? That always look at or observe or watch those who are below you in the worldly matters. And then I think another hadith mentions those in the deen matters, like look at them, those who are better than you. So in making those comparisons, we want to look at those that are below us. We want our children to be exposed to those that are below us as well, right? So showing them what poverty looks like. If a child grows up in a very affluent neighborhood, sees big houses and Teslas and all these nice cars, the child isn't aware of that there's actually another reality out there. Right? Most kids who come to public school come from, mashallah, good families, well-off families, right? At least middle class, if not upper class. So give opportunities, provide that opportunity for them to go and see those poor people, see the homeless in Chicago, right? There are, certain places, projects where you can go and volunteer and take them there so they can see that. Have clear expectations and boundaries, right? Again, expectations in terms of what you want from them and giving them gratitude as well, right? Thank you for doing your homework. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for taking care of this yourself. I appreciate it. I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that Allah has given us a child who can do X, Y, Z. When you do that, you would reinforce the behavior. It's likely to increase future positive behaviors. Show empathy towards them. This is one of the bigger issues right now with children and us, and unfortunately, especially teenagers, is most parents will start to make comparisons with themselves, and they'll say, you know, I don't understand why he's depressed. I don't understand why he's so frustrated. I don't understand why he's stressed out. Back in my day, when I went to high school, this has happened, right? We have to recognize, and I mentioned this last time, I think, the saying that some people say Ali radiallahu anh said it, but okay, I don't know who said it. Maybe it's a hadith as well, but that don't raise your children like your parents raised you, because they were raised in a different time than you. So we cannot make that comparison. We have to empathize with them and their struggles. That yes, for them, maybe because they're weak, right? Maybe because our generation worked a little bit harder, and now the next generation has room to take it easy. But the fact is that some of these things are stressful for them, right? While we're teaching them the idea of like, hey, this is your subjective truth, right? This is not, doesn't mean that it's objectively hard. While we're working on that, we're also empathizing with them. We're also teaching them, I can see you're stressed out. I can tell that this is overwhelming for you. But you know what? What's going to make you better, stronger, is that you keep going, that you expose yourself to it, not to shy away from it, not to avoid it. Okay. And you've probably heard this before, right? Always reward or reinforce the effort and not the achievement. So when you see your child working hard, studying for the exam, working hard on a project, then you reinforce that. You say good things to them. Good job. Wonderful. This is awesome. Right. Not unlike when when the result comes back, if your child is memorizing a surah for a Quran competition, you reward them. Hey, if you do 5 ayahs, we're going to go get something to eat or something. Awesome job. I saw you memorizing that, you spent like an hour doing that. I really appreciate it. Not like, oh, what did you get? What place did you get? Okay, second place. Okay, cool. First place. Oh, wonderful. Awesome. Good job. Because then they're going to focus on just being competitive, putting other people's needs away, and just focus on that instead of effort. We want them to become individuals who put in effort and not just look at the end result. Increasing resilience and grit, right? These terminologies are a bit more modern day terminologies, but the idea that they can withstand challenges, the idea that they need to face something that is uneasy, that is uncomfortable for them. One of the examples that we see in parents in schools oftentimes is the child comes home and complains about the teacher. Oh, the teacher is being mean, the teacher is being this way or that way. And what do we parents do? We immediately want to contact the teacher, contact the board of the school, complain and say, oh, why did you do that, right? Without taking a minute to sit and talk to the child and say, okay, I understand that you're feeling upset. Let's look at the situation. What could you have done differently? Was there any part of it that you can say, I did this and maybe that also contributed to the outcome? And if yes, you focus on that. Okay, you need to work on that. So you don't give any reason to the teacher for them to become angry or frustrated with you. So allow room for failure, right? For them as well. Teach them that it's okay to fail. It's okay to mess up. We want to encourage perseverance. We want to encourage persistence. Keep doing it. Keep trying. Don't give up. It's okay. You try 100 times, and even if you fail 100 times, I'm perfectly happy with you. No problem. But giving up, crying, or becoming sad, that's not going to help you. I understand you're upset. I know it's frustrating, but please keep at it. Fostering a mindset of growth, right? That, growth requires you. I like this picture because it's like a little plant that comes out of, the pavement, right? It pushes through the pavement. So growth requires that you face the obstacles and you push through them, right? And encouraging healthy risk taking, right? It should say healthy, not health. Meaning, if they're doing something that is relatively risky, but they're trying, they're doing it with careful attitude that allow them to do it, then give them opportunity. It's okay. It's okay if they fail. It's okay if they get hurt a little bit. It's not going to be the end of the world. I mean, it doesn't mean you give a gun to your child and like let them play with it, right? You understand what I mean? So allow them to be able to do that. There was a Russian psychologist named Vygotsky who has this idea of what's called zone of proximal development, right? Basically, the idea is that if you look at your children, and this is like a difficulty increasing as it goes up, learning and development also increases as it goes up. So there are things that your child simply cannot do even with help, right? Sorry, difficulty increases as it goes down. And there are things that a child can do with some help. And then there's a zone of proximal development, and this is what a child can do on their own. So what a child can do there on their own, that's fine. Like maybe some kids can eat and whatnot. And then there's things that they need a little bit of help with, right? That area between this and that is the zone of proximal. That's where they will learn. What most parents tend to do is what we call scaffolding, meaning even in the areas that they can do comfortably, we tend to come in and jump in and be, oh, let me help you with this. We don't let them try. Let me help you with this. This goes back to the entitlement piece too, right? Because then they feel like they're entitled to it. Like, if I can't do something, you have to help me. You have to come in and save, right? No, let them figure it out. Let them see how things go. And then when there's areas where the child cannot do even with help, then that's something they can't do, right? So you obviously don't have to worry about it. These are the areas that people oftentimes get caught up in. What a child can do with help, what they can do on their own. In between is the zone of proximal development. That's where we want child to be. And they're going to go back and forth from this to this with some of our help, some of our assistance in building their relationship as well. But that's fine for them. If they can do it on their own, if they've done it before on their own, then push it and allow it and expose them to it, right? Try not to avoid it. Okay. It's important to have a collaboration with the teachers, right? So, recognize that you're on the same team. Our job, as teachers, as parents, is we want to raise healthy Muslim children who don't have any psychological as well as spiritual problems, issues, who have a good connection with themselves, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with people around them, with the environment that they live in, that they are a productive part of the society, that they bring some value to the society, right? They do something for the sake of other people, that they have a self-sacrificing attitude, right? So we're on the same team. We all have same goals. Ideally, I hope that we do. So it's good to have regular communication with the teachers. It's good to, meet with them, understand teachers. Teachers have a lot of pressure. Teachers have, CPSA didn't pay me money to say this, but it's true, right? When you're teaching, there's a lot of pressure. You have all these kids that you're trying to control, especially in private schools, because they're not as funded as public schools. So you only have one teacher per 20, 30 students. It's not easy. So communicate and ask, how can I serve as an active parent? What can I do in my child's life that will help them grow and develop? That can help them facilitate in their learning. Unfortunately, we tend to do the opposite. We give teachers things that they can do that takes away from our parenting, rather than us coming in and helping the teachers out. We want to create a productive learning environment at home, right? One that is balanced. I talked about this last time as well, but we live in a time where there's a lot of constant stimulation. Children cannot stay bored. They don't want to get bored. So we have to create for them opportunities so that they can be productive, that they can learn. We want to encourage them to read. It's another thing nowadays, unfortunately, especially with AI, right? You don't need to read a book. You can ask ChatGPT to summarize the books for you. We want to encourage that idea of learning. We want to make that learning fun for them at school and in the house. Like I said before, unfortunately, our private schools tend to be really competitive. And I think for the sake of competitiveness, we lose, this opportunity for our children to enjoy learning. We don't want, one of the things that I've noticed, especially in our community, is that our learning ends with our terminal degree, whether it's a bachelor's or a master's or a doctoral degree. Oh yeah, I'm done. Learning is something that's lifelong, right? We should always be learning. We should always be taking courses, learning new things, learning how to do certain things, certain tasks, some kind of labor activity, something like Islamic studies, constant learning. It doesn't end with like when you graduate with that, that degree that you wanted.
So we want to make sure that they don't get sick and tired of learning, right? That they can, find some kind of pleasure in that, and they look forward to it. We want to support their healthy interests, right? If they have anything that is healthy, like, for example, if they want to like draw or paint, or they like traveling and you're able to do it and it doesn't have to be expensive, or they like the outdoors, they like walking. Some of them might like technology, right? So that doesn't mean you let them be on technology all the time, but you might have to give them more time. You might have to provide for them ways that they can use their interest in technology and learn more, rather than being addicted to video games or YouTube, etc. And then again, we want to challenge them, but with support, the zone that we talked about, right? So we want to be able to sometimes let them figure things out and be like, hey, I'm here. Let me know when you need me. Do you need my help? I'm here. If not, okay, no problem. Keep trying. If you fail, don't try again. Let's see, maybe you'll get it this time. Okay, you've tried it several times. Would you like me to help you? Okay, no problem. I can understand it can be frustrating. Let me help you. So, it's learning. And again, going back to what we talked about before, because I can tell you that we live in a time, and as we're moving towards the future, children are not going to find value in learning, right? They're not going to find value in, nowadays people don't want to get bachelor's degrees. They're like, why do I need to take courses in foreign language? Why do I need to know biology if I'm a computer science major? Why do I need to know calculus if I'm if I'm pre-medicine or whatever psychology major? So we're coming to a point where because of these postmodern, post-enlightenment, post-truth ideas, we're going to unfortunately lose interest in any kind of learning. Now with AI, which is making a big movement, right? That there's no need to learn something. Like, why do you even have to do any research? Before, I mean, if I had to write a paper on let's say how to raise children, I would have to go and look through and read through several books and articles, come back. Now I don't need to do that. I can go on ChatGPT, type in, and it'll do all the work for me. So it's going to make us lazy, right? It takes away from even the small opportunities that we have for learning and growth. And last but not least, I mentioned two of these du'as last time too, right? Make du'a. Ultimately, hidayah is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I gave the example of Nuh alayhi salam last time. You can be the best parent, you can have the best teachers, does not guarantee that your child is going to be on the right path. And so what we do is we make dua, we put in our effort, and we do it with ikhlas, with sincerity, and we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it. Some of the du'as here, for example, ربي أن أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. Oh Allah, inspire me to always be thankful for your favors, which you have blessed me and my parents with, and to do good deeds and those deeds that please you, and instill righteousness in my offspring. I truly repent to you and I truly submit to your will. Like, I'm the one who submits, like indeed I'm amongst Muslims, the one who submits to your will. Rabbi habli min as-salihin, Allah, grant me a child from amongst the righteous. So whether you're about to have a child or even the one that you have right now. And then asking Allah's refuge in the current fitnas that we live in. Like, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab jahannam wa min adhab al-qabr. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from the torment of the hell, from the torment of the grave, wa min fitnat al-mahya wal-mamat, and from the trials of life and death. ومن فتنة المسيح ومن شر فتنة المسيح الدجال, and from the mischief of the from Dajjal, the Antichrist. Now, the modern day challenges, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we seek his protection from them, because again, we're going towards a time where, like I said, things are going to get worse, unfortunately, and we have to play an active role. Hopefully through teaching some of these concepts and ideas and through practicing them for ourselves, part of the parenting journey for me as a parent is that I'm teaching myself, I'm learning myself, that I'm going to work on myself, implement these concepts, these things, these ideas, these beliefs, and become a stronger, better believer Muslim, one who has humility, one who doesn't think that I'm always right, doesn't have narcissism ideally, one who's able to emotionally connect with others. And inshallah, my children will learn through that. I'm going to facilitate a process in the house that allows them. One of the things parents always say is it's hard. Parenting demands so much time. Now, if you go back to what we talked about earlier, that's still the idea of like my the value of my time, what I want versus what is being asked of me. Some parents, fathers will say that, oh, I come home from work and I need to wind down, so I need like an hour or two. I say, okay, I understand you have to wind down. You have a lot, you've put in hard work and you work 8 hours or whatever, but you don't need an hour or two. Maybe you need 5 minutes. Right? Come check in with your spouse, see how they're doing, say salam to your parents, your children, or if your parents are, if they're with you, then go, take a shower, take 5-10 minutes, maybe pray. That's your winding down. And then come back down, and now this is where your real job begins, right? Of parenting. So we have that idea that, no, what about me? What about my time? What about my happiness? Kids came and it took away from my life, right? I've sacrificed my life for my children. That's what we're supposed to do, right? That's why we don't only believe in this dunya, because the idea is, yes, I may not find complete satisfaction, happiness, contentment in this role, but inshallah, Allah rewards me. Allah is not overlooking my efforts. And then we struggle when our children aren't doing so well. Like, oh, my child is using bad language, or I saw him, he was smoking weed or something. I must be a bad parent. Well, it's not a reflection on what you did. If you made mistakes, we ask Allah for forgiveness. But if you played an active role as much as we could, the hidayah comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So may Allah protect us from all of these things. Again, it's not an easy task. There's no like one right formula for any of this, but the goal is we keep trying and keep learning. As always, if you have any questions, you can type it in here. You can always contact me. My email is on Khalil Center's website. I'm going to, again, upload this on YouTube right after this finishes. I appreciate you all attending. And even though school, I think, is almost done, I believe tomorrow might be the last day for some people, that, in summer, there's a lot more opportunities for active parenting. And whether we like it or not, by choice or by force, children are home, so we have to do that. So inshallah, make it easy for all of us and accept all of our efforts. So inshallah, we'll see each other again someday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.